let's talk about water. I believe we're intended to get most of our water from our food. Unfortunately, because most people are already severely dehydrated from eating food that's practically devoid of water for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, that doesn't work so well. Right? That's not enough for most of us. We have to do more than that. But that's the first piece to understand, is that we were never intended to drink a lot of water. We're just now in a situation, an unnatural situation, where we're dehydrated and need to do that to correct that temporarily. It's a temporary thing, okay? So what water should we be drinking? There are those people who believe that we should drink distilled water because distilled water is the most pure. It's actually not the most pure, but that's what people think. The most pure water is actually reverse osmosis that uses a very, very fine micron filter. So if you're in a laboratory and you want the purest water, they use a filter that has tiny, tiny holes in it, like microscopically thin holes that only water molecules can pass through. Because even distillation can leave some toxins in the water. Because anything that boils at a lower temperature than water, or the same temperature of water, is in the filtrate, is in the supposedly clean water, okay? The purity of the water is a factor, but it's not necessarily the most important factor. Okay, obviously, we don't want there to be nasty toxic substances in the water. But at the same time, water in nature always contains minerals. And we need those minerals because the water won't cross cell membranes without them. We can't get into the cells, okay? We can't use it. So now there are people who say, well, distilled water, that's what rain is. Precipitation is distilled water. Because water evaporates. You know how a distiller works? You boil the water, the water evaporates, the steam rises, it meets a stainless steel condenser plate, it hits this, it condenses into droplets, and runs into a second chamber. So the hydrological cycle, this is what happens in nature. There's water in the ground, lakes, streams, rivers, oceans. Water evaporates, and then it falls again. Isn't that what distillation is? Kinda. It kinda is. There's a difference. Now, you know, the people who believe, I don't know if anyone here believes this, but there are people who now seem to believe somehow impossibly that we live on a flat earth with some sort of a globe over the top of it, right? Really. You know, there are people who think that all science is crooked, that all science is just a scam intended to keep us in the dark, etc., etc. Scientists have been clear for a long time that we live on a globe like every other planet. There's no reason this one would be different. If we lived on a flat plane with a, I don't know what it would be, plexiglass dome, I guess, that's natural, with a plexiglass dome over the top, then the water, the surface water, would evaporate and would rise until it hits the dome, and then it would condense. But there's a key piece you have to understand. Water droplets always condense on a solid object. They don't precipitate out of the air otherwise. So dew appears on solid objects because air, heavy with water, when it's cool, it has to reach the dew point, right? It will precipitate out, only when it touches something. Well, how about rain? Droplets of precipitation, whether it falls as rain, snow, sleet, hail, it doesn't matter, it's all the same water. Those droplets only form around a solid molecule. Okay? This, by the way, this is all real, verifiable science. Okay? I'm not making this up. It's not my opinion. Right? There's still water people who aren't willing to actually read science, say that's not true, but it is true. So rain forms. In fact, if you take a desert and can convert it into a forest, can plant enough trees in an area, you increase the amount of rain. Because one of the primary things that seeds rain clouds is pollen, tree pollen. So the tree pollen in the air, the water vapor condenses out of the air when it hits that solid molecule. There's no stainless steel condenser plate in the sky. So there has to be molecules in the air, right? Unless we've got this plexiglass dome, there has to be molecules in the air that the air comes into contact with. That's what precipitates out rain. Raindrops contain pollen, dust, minerals in the air. There are ions in the air. These are minerals. Or, anybody? Bacteria. What else? Pollutants. Yeah. Here we are in a place, we've got an average of, what, 1 or 2 vehicles per hour that pass by. There's no factories. We're surrounded by trees. We've got tons of oxygen here. The air is about as clean here as, as most places on Earth. And yet, the rain, theoretically, you do not want to drink it without filtering it first, because there could be clouds of pollutants from Bombay, from some very toxic city, which can travel thousands of miles across the sky. And the rain's falling through those. Okay? So you have to understand, rain is not, it's not distilled water, as people say it is. Never. In one study, the average sample of rain, they took 52 samples from 50 different places, and they found the average sample contained 3 minerals, and the maximum was 7. Okay? There were none that contained no minerals. They all contained some. This is not distilled water. Okay? These same people, by the way, tell you urine's distilled water. No, it isn't. You're not distilling any water in your body. Urine actually is how we eliminate most of the toxins. Again, this is simple science, very clear. They say that fruit juice, the water in your fruit, is distilled water. The water in your fruit is loaded with minerals and nutrients. It's not distilled water. Okay? Distilled water is man-made. It doesn't exist on the planet. Okay? I would not drink it. I would not drink it. Distilled water has a negative charge. Okay? Distilled water, people say, that's okay. What it's going to do is it's going to bond with positively charged pollutants in your body and pull them out.
My dad uses distilled water to clean stuff.
Yeah, you can use it to clean stuff, because it'll do that. But to drink it, I mean, here's a fact. Distilled water doesn't have an intelligence. It's not making a choice. It's not saying, I'm going to bond with pollutants. What does it bond with, this negatively charged distilled water? It's going to bond with anything which has a positive charge, because that's how it works. It's not saying this one yes, that one no. If it's positive charge and it comes in contact with it, there's a bond. That material is going to be carried out of your body, out of your bloodstream. Okay? 4 of your body's primary electrolytes are positively charged. Potassium, magnesium, sodium. What's the other one? No? Bigger. More important. Potassium, magnesium, sodium. Calcium. Potassium, magnesium, sodium, and calcium are all positively charged electrolytes. Okay, you drink distilled water and they are leaving your body. Okay, is this a good idea? No. Okay, I wouldn't do that. So now think about it this way. Okay, put all that aside, whatever you believe about this. 25.5 million animal species thrive drinking nature's spring waters and stream waters. Do they contain minerals? Yep. Inorganic minerals. Okay, is that a problem? Nope. It's not. In fact, studies show, the studies are mixed, but some studies show that consuming water that's very soft, that is very low in specific minerals, means there are higher rates of heart disease and other problems. Okay? Many who would say, we need to have these inorganic minerals in the water. They're not going to hurt you. They're going to pass right out of your system. I mean, some of the arguments are ridiculous. That distilled water people say, well, when you boil, after using your distiller for a while, it's got all this mineral scale there. Are you boiling water in your body? If you boil the water, you're going to leave the minerals behind. But the minerals are in solution in the water. If your body doesn't want them, guess what happens? You pee them out. It's not hurting you. Yeah.
What about alkalized water, which is now sold in purifying machines?
It's a scam. It's a scam. Alkalized water is a scam. You do not need your water to be alkaline. Okay? You need your water to fall into the range of water in nature. Okay? So natural spring and stream water ranges from pH 6 to 8 in most cases. Now there's some springs that are very acidic, but typically you encounter clean water, fresh water, it's going to be between pH 6 and 8, and that's perfectly fine. Doesn't it hurt you to drink water that's acidic? pH 6 is acidic, slightly, because 7 is neutral. Doesn't that hurt you? Anybody here drink orange juice? pH 3? And to keep this in perspective for you, the pH scale is a logarithmic scale. So pH 5 is 10 times more acidic than pH 6. And pH 4 is 100 times more acidic than pH 6. And pH 3 is 1,000 times more acidic than pH 6. And people are drinking orange juice, apple juice, cranberry juice, grapefruit juice, grape juice. All of these juices are between pH 2.5 and pH 3.5. And you're worried about drinking pH 6? Okay, there's nothing to worry about. It's not a problem. Okay. Now, by the way, we have our water here tested professionally every 3 months. And it's normally right around pH 6.8 to pH 7.2. But it's going to vary from day to day. Just depends on what particular minerals are loose in the water that day. Water is pH 7, period, all the time, if it's just H2O. It's always something in the water that gives it the different pH. So it's not an issue. It's nothing to be concerned about. Okay? Is everyone clear about this? So the fact that the water might be, between 6 and maybe as high as 8 doesn't matter. Do you want water that's pH 11? Has anybody had the experience, maybe here over the last few weeks, of having bile in their mouth? Anyone ever had this experience? How did that taste to you? No, but okay, disgusting. How about you? Acidic. It tasted acidic. Have you had this experience, Abby? You're shaking your head?
No, but I know a little bit.
Okay. Has anybody else had the experience of having bile in their mouth? Did it taste acidic to you?
Having what?
Did bile? Did it taste acidic to you?
Yeah, I transcended it. So bad.
Okay, it tasted very acidic to you? Okay, here's the thing about it. Here's what's interesting about it. Bile is not acidic. It's got a high pH. Bases burn more than acids. So, hydrochloric acid has a pH of 1. Okay? That's 6 away from 7. Add 6 to 7, pH 13, burns more than hydrochloric acid. pH 12 burns more than pH 2. pH 11 burns more than pH 3. We do not want things to be hyperalkaline. We want we have in nature. We're never going to improve in nature. Okay? Understand that the pH of a substance when it's sitting on the table or in the pitcher does not determine how it impacts your body. Oranges have a pH of 3.5. Are they good for you? Do they make your body acidic? No, they make your body more alkaline. The fact that they're 3.5 points on the pH scale below 7 doesn't change that. Drinking water that's highly alkaline doesn't necessarily make you more alkaline, any more than drinking something acidic or eating something acidic makes you more acidic. It doesn't work that way. It's a scam. Okay, there's no reason to drink alkalized water. It's a scam. They're adding minerals that would not naturally be there into the water to raise the pH. Yeah.
Okay, I'm in total agreement with you. far as the alkaline water, I have friends who drink, and they swear that alkaline water helps them the next day.
Helps them how?
Like, have less hangover.
Well, I doubt it. I don't know, but there's no reason that it would. I can tell you, it's interestingly, years ago, I think it might have been 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I was getting ready, I was planning a lecture tour in Florida. I wound up doing a dozen dates in different cities in Florida. And someone referred me to 2 people in Florida, partners that live there, that they put on events. They said, contact them, maybe they can host you, they'll set up some events in their area, they do events all the time. I contacted them, they said, what would you be talking about? And I said, I'd be talking about, fasting and optimal diet and hydration. And they're like, well, we're hydrated. I said, really, why's that? And they said, we drink alkalized water. I said, well, I'll tell you what, when I come, I'll bring a device that allows me to measure your hydration level. And guess what? They weren't more hydrated than anyone else there. I have yet to find anybody more hydrated because of the type of water they drink. With the exception of people drinking distilled water who tend to be less well hydrated. Okay? So yes, it might well be that they believe it because that's what they expect to feel, or maybe because they've invested in this machine and they're not conscious of it, they're probably drinking more water. That's what usually happens. Okay? It's not because it's a high alkaline water. I mean, I've seen no evidence of that. It doesn't make sense to me. There's no science to support that. I think it's bogus. Okay? So the best that you can do is to find clean spring water. Is that easy where you live? Maybe not. There are springs in Israel I've checked. I don't know where they are. I mean, I know people. I've got a friend who's committed to his health. And once every 2 months or so, he'll get in his car and he'll drive 2 hours. He lives in the West. He'll drive to, sometimes he's all over the western states. He now lives in Oregon most of the time. But he'll drive to just across the Oregon border into California to Mount Shasta, which is where the springs that are the headwaters of the Sacramento River form. If you haven't been there, it's amazing. This is a spring where there's 50 gallons a minute pouring out of the ground. It's incredible. Have you been there? You should see this. It's amazing. And anytime you're there, I mean, it's in a park. They probably close the gates at some time. I've been there during the day with him. There'll be, if you're there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes gathering your own water, you'll see 30 or 40 people coming and going doing the same thing. Okay? He goes there with 100 gallons worth of containers and fills them up, glass bottles, etc., and lives on that for a while until he needs to go do it again. It might be worth making the effort. Okay? Ideally, you want to store water in glass or clay, not plastic. Plastic always breaks down over time. It breaks down faster with exposure to heat or sunlight. So if you're when I'm traveling, sometimes the only option is a plastic bottle, right? Now it's improving. At Heathrow, there are machines that dispense clean water, and if you can have your own bottle, right? And you can take an empty bottle through security, and you can fill it up on the other side, and bring water with you. That's cool. Hopefully that happens everywhere. In California, I'm sorry?
Starbucks, that's where I always fill my water at every airport. They have filtered water.
Okay. I don't know how they're filtering it, if that's really good enough, because most forms of filtration don't eliminate some of the nastiest stuff. But that's better than what you're buying in a plastic bottle, because it hasn't been sitting in a plastic bottle for a while. So you can bring a stainless steel container, bring it with you. You can bring plastic bottles where it wouldn't have been sitting there for a long time. That's probably better. I didn't know they offered that. Does every Starbucks offer that?
Well, I just go up to them and say, can you please fill up my bottle? And they do, yeah. They have a spigot that's filled with 30 days for some.
Okay.
And
I'll try that.
that's supposedly why their drinks taste of that, because they have filtered water.
Okay. I think they taste better because they're more expensive.
Yeah.
And because they have a lot more sugar in them. But I don't know. I don't drink their stuff. I go to Starbucks when I travel to use the Wi-Fi.
Water.
And I buy a bottle of water because I feel like I should buy something if I'm sitting there. What else? So if you can't find a good source of spring water, I believe the next best is reverse osmosis. Okay? Now here's the thing about it. I had two brothers fast here together about 15 months ago, maybe a year ago. Maybe it might have been December last year. And these guys, they've been clients of mine for a while. They both fasted with me via Skype before coming from Australia. And they've got tons of money. They're both very, very successful entrepreneurs. So they bought the best reverse osmosis filter you could buy. Like $1,000, thousands of dollars for this machine. And I said, yeah, that's not the one you want. You want the $75, $150 home countertop unit. Why? What's the difference? They bought something that produces laboratory quality water, which contains no minerals. You want the minerals. A home, like a typical kitchen reverse osmosis unit, leaves about 10% of the minerals in the water. That's good. You need some. Okay? Doesn't have to be a lot, but there has to be something in there. Because if they're not in there, now they're going to grab minerals from your body and take them out. Okay? Now the water's not going to cross cell membranes without doing that first, without taking minerals from your body. So I would buy a relatively inexpensive $150 filter. You can also buy a more expensive whole house system. But again, this is going to have a typical micron filter like the countertop unit. It's just that it's doing all of your household water, and there's usually 5 to 7 stages. So there's a charcoal stage, there's a ultraviolet light stage to kill pathogens. There's a bunch of different stages. Okay, those are perfectly fine. If you're using any type of filtration, home filtration device like this, you have to make sure you are cleaning or replacing the filters as you need to. Because if you're not, you wind up later on with something that's worse than what you started with. Okay? You have to make sure you're doing that maintenance. Okay?
Is there any way to find out if the minerals were taken out? Any test? You could test
Yeah,
it.
you could take whatever water you have. What we do here is we use a laboratory in San Jose, Costa Rica, one of the top laboratories in the country, and they have a specific protocol. So we buy sterile sample cups from the pharmacy, and they want a sterile sample cup filled with our water, and they want a plastic bottle filled with water. They do different tests, right? They want them sent to them in a cooler full of ice so it stays cold. Can't warm up because the plastic degrades. Even the sterile sample cup's a plastic cup, so it has to be cold. They have to get it the same day they test it. So we do this every few months. One of my staff members comes early. The guys are usually here at 6. He comes in at 5. He fills up the containers, however many they want, puts it in a cooler full of ice. It's ready to go, and drives it down to Ojancha, the town at the bottom of the mountain, to catch a 6 a.m. bus. So it gets to San Jose by 10 o'clock in the morning. They have it in the lab by 11. They test it the same day. If it's a holiday or they're closed, we've wasted our money sending it to them. We have to do it again. They won't test it. They have to test it the same day or they won't bother. So find a lab close to you. In New York City, it should be easy. There's probably in New Jersey, there's probably plenty of labs right there that you could send it to, put it in a taxi, drive it yourself, whatever. Send a courier, have the water tested, find out what their protocol is, have it tested. They'll email you a report within a few days, a week at the most. We have ours, if you want to see them. We have all the pH for the last 5 years, if the ladies can find them. You're also looking at, the other things that are important. It's not just the pH of the water, which isn't even that important. I mean, even if the water were pH 4 or 5, it would be higher, more alkaline than most of the things most people drink. Coffee, tea, all soft drinks, and all juices are much more acidic than pH 4. All of those things that people are drinking all the time. Okay? Even if it was that low, it wouldn't hurt you. Okay? But the chances are good if you're using natural water, it's going to be pH 6 or higher. Okay? And that's perfectly fine.
Is Fuji tested? Fuji water? Today it's like a 9.1 or something like that.
I don't know.
pH.
I don't know. I mean, you can have it tested if you want to. He's asking about Fuji, the water you can buy in a bottle. Is that okay? You know, the problem with most of these waters is they come in plastic bottles. Depends how long they've been sitting in plastic, depends how much heat they've been exposed to. There's lots of issues. In the US, I can only talk about US laws. I know the laws in the US. In the US, if you call water spring water, it has to have come out of the ground. It has to come from a spring. They cannot bottle it from a tap and call it spring water. That's illegal. Okay? So if it's called spring water, it means it came out of the ground. It only has to meet the same standards as tap water for purity. It does not have to be any more pure than that, but it has to have come out of the ground. Okay? You can go to the grocery store in any city in the US and buy drinking water. Okay? Here's what that is. That's tap water. That's all it is. Tap water is considered safe for drinking. They can take tap water, bottle it, and sell it to you as drinking water. Okay, if you have a tap, don't waste your money buying drinking water. Okay, that's silly. No bottled water in the U.S., purified water has to meet more stringent standards. It's not necessarily fit for drinking, but it has to reach a certain level of purity. Any other bottled water does not have to be any better than tap water to be called, to sell it, be sold as drinking water. Does not have to meet standards any higher than tap water. Okay? So you have to do your research. I mean, I do drink bottled water when I travel. I don't drink it here because I'd rather not have something in a plastic bottle. For how long, who knows, right? There's nothing better than spring water. Now, when it affects people, as it sometimes does, it's because it's actually getting into your cells better. As more is happening. You might feel nauseous, etc.
Is polycarbonate embedded in plastic?
Polycarbonate bottles don't break down as easily as normal plastic bottles. When they do break down, it's pretty toxic. So it's yes and no. The worst bottles are the ones that they typically sell distilled water and drinking water. Those like gallon milk bottles with the formed handle. You don't want water in those things. Don't ever drink from those. Other than that, unfortunately, it's pretty complicated, and I don't remember. There's a 1. That's what those things are. There's a 2, 3, 4, all like that. The higher the number, it's not necessarily better. It's just different. So polycarbonate bottles are going to be some of the best bottles you can drink from, but you want to make sure you keep them away from heat and direct sunlight because they will break down, and then it's quite toxic. Okay? In a recent study of some 30 or 40 different types of bottled water, every one of them had plastic in the water in measurable quantity from the plastic cap. When you screw that plastic cap on, there's enough friction that you're losing tiny amounts of plastic into the water. If you can find it, the best would be water in a glass bottle with a metal cap. That's going to be the best you can do. Or a stopper. So the other thing, to keep in mind is that this whole conversation becomes much less of a concern, much less of an issue when you get your body clean and hydrated. Because then you don't have to drink much water. The average person needs to drink quite a bit, and if it's not very clean, it's going to affect you. If you're drinking 10% as much water as the average person, or need to drink 10% as much, it's not going to affect you that much if the water's not perfect. Okay? So you do the best you can, and then you relax and sleep at night and don't worry about it. That's what I do. Yeah?
There's a place in Texas called Mineral, Texas. There was one specific well there. The people who had senility started drinking out of that well, and it took care of their issues.
They eliminated senility from drinking this water.
They call it crazy water. And you can
Okay.
buy it. You can buy it now, but now it's got to go through all the process that the government requires.
Right. Yeah.
It's distilled.
You were talking about the important elements of water, and you just said pH, but what else?
Yeah, right. So when they're testing for water, I mean, again, this is one of the areas that the distilled water people have it completely wrong. You know, they're telling you that you should have the lowest possible total dissolved solids, TDS, the lowest possible. That's not true. Water in nature has some solids dissolved in it. That's perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt you. So some people say that one of the reasons the Hunzes, and the Hunzes have been, you know, indeed they've lived healthier than most people. Some people think it's all a myth. I have a video talking about this, and it's funny because someone just commented, it's an old video, someone commented yesterday and said, this is bullshit, you know what you're talking about. And just below his comment was a comment by a Hunza who said, you know, everything Loren is saying here is true. And someone who grew up there no longer lives there. You know, there's a number of things that were happening that I think that have contributed to them being much healthier than most people. One, they're cut off from, you know, from progress, from the rest of the world, the modern world. There's no technology. Everyone works outside. They make their living with their hands, right, with their on their backs. So they're all getting exercise. They're all getting fresh air. They're all getting sunlight. They don't have many trees up there because they live high up in the mountains where there's not many trees that grow. They grow apricots and a few other fruits there, but they don't, thank you, they eat the seeds. They don't have a lot of wood. They don't have fuel. They don't have gas. They don't have coal. They don't have much wood, which means they don't eat much cooked food because they don't have a lot of fuel to cook with. So most of what they eat is raw. They run out of food every year in the wintertime. There's no food. So guess what they all do? They all hunker down and they fast. Okay, it's not a full fast because what they'll do is they'll actually drink something they make from the seeds, a liquid, like a lemonade from this apricot seeds. But some people think that one of the reasons that they're as healthy as they are is because the water that they're drinking up high in the mountains is loaded with minerals, way more than most water. Because of all the ice there, it's actually taking the rocks break down. And so the water there has tons of minerals in it. And some people think that's the reason. I think there is no one reason. It's a bunch of factors. If you look at the 7 keys to optimal health that I teach, they're doing a better job than most people of meeting all of them. Exercise, fresh air, pure water, sleep. They don't have a lot of fuel, so what do they do when it gets dark? They go to sleep. They go to bed. They fast every year. They eat relatively little food. Their diet's very simple. They don't have any processed food. They don't eat a lot of animal products. They keep some animals and they eat some animal products, but they're poor people who can't afford to eat a lot of animal products. That's expensive to do. So they're doing a much better job of meeting all of these 7 keys than most people do. It's no one thing, okay? But just pointing out that they're drinking this mineral-rich water. That's all they have. And they do much better than most people do.
Well, what about the more kind of woo-woo stuff? Vortexing water,
Yeah,
energizing water.
right. The question is, if you couldn't hear, what about some of the woo-woo stuff like vortexing water, energizing water, etc.? There's no real agreement on some of these things. Vortices, I think, do make sense. There's a problem when we store water the way we do. We run it in pipes. It's creating issues. The water loses a certain energy, and so vortices do seem to make a difference. Some people believe in charging water in sunlight. Other people say nature's perfect water is coming up out of the ground in the dark, and that's what we want. That when it's exposed to sunlight, maybe it's actually not as good. These are unanswered questions. I believe, again, my personal belief is the closer to natural it is, the better we're going to be. So, if you had a spring in your backyard, you can go out there and get the water you need when you need it. That would be the very best you could do, assuming it was clean. I mean, it's important to understand that water coming up out of the ground isn't necessarily clean. We have polluted most of the groundwater. So you have to know. That's why we have ours tested. And having it tested once meant that it was clean then. But what if a neighbor is dumping gasoline on the ground and it's making its way into the water? So we have it tested throughout the year to make sure. Okay? don't forget that, we drink, all of us here drink the same water. We're feeding you. The animals drink the water. Costa Rica is actually famous for its water. The water here is known to be incredibly pure. There are many people here that come here to sell bottled water from here. All right, any other questions? Yeah.
What's your opinion? I've seen lately here, for example, there's the rainforest water that they sell,
Uh-huh.
and they sell it now in cardboard boxes
Uh-huh.
and aluminum bottles. Like, what do you feel about those? Are those a better option?
Well, I'm not an expert on the packaging, but I'm pretty sure we don't ever want anything from aluminum. Aluminum is very, very toxic. The plastic boxes, like the juice box type box, has a layer inside. Cardboard obviously is not impervious to water, so there's something in there that is. You don't want that. You don't want to drink out of those things. I would not drink that water. Okay? Again, I would opt for water in a glass bottle.
But if you had to choose the cardboard or the plastic, what would you go with?
If I had to choose the cardboard or the plastic, I'd probably choose the plastic.
Why?
Because I believe that the coating inside those containers is so nasty that you don't want to drink anything from it.
And it is plastic.
It is,
But, yeah, with PPA and a ton of other stuff.
right, it's a form of plastic that's very high in these nasty, what's the word I'm looking for? Unstable toxins.
Yeah, the other question I have about the glass bottles, I'm so into not consuming heavy metals, so the metal top on the glass bottles is aluminum. So is it better for the
It is.
plastic?
It's better. The water's not usually in contact with the top. I would still rather drink that than something with plastic in it. But, I don't know. Obviously, we're trying to do something which is package this natural thing we should be able to get from nature. And there's going to be issues. But, best would probably be a glass bottle with a glass stopper or a cork stopper, untreated cork.
There's a website called finespring.com.
Yeah, that's where I'm saying. I've used that to find springs in Israel. People tell me all the time, there's no springs where I live. I'm talking to them on the phone. I go to my computer and go, oh, yes, there is. They're not always clean. You have to check. But if you're not familiar with it, what Craig was just mentioning, findaspring.com. It's a web page. You put in your country. You can then, your state if you're in the U.S., and you can actually look at your specific area. Now, these are springs that people have put on there. So the fact, there may not be many where you are. That doesn't mean they don't exist. It means they're not on the web page yet. Okay? Also understand that the fact that a spring is on there does not mean that the water is necessarily safe to drink. It just means it's a spring.
What about brass
Brass?
yeah.
Copper.
Brass.
Copper is the
Copper brass.
Okay, I've never seen a brass container. I don't know if you'd want to. If you'd want copper, I don't know if you'd want to use that or not. Copper,
No.
I think probably not.
Yes.
I think the only metal you really want, what would be ideal would probably be glass with a stainless steel top. Stainless steel is expensive.
Copper kills.
I'd rather have stainless steel. I think it's less reactive than silver. But I don't know. I don't think you're going to see either anytime soon. And silver's a lot more expensive than stainless steel. Probably not going to happen. Those would be expensive bottles of water. Ideally what happens eventually is everybody provides clean water, and people carry their own containers. Ceramic, glass, with some way of stopping it that's actually not harmful. Again, a cork would work. A cork is the bark of an oak tree. It's not going to hurt you. That would be the way to do it. Maybe, think about this big project. Maybe we could do that. To actually provide people with water.
IKEA does glass bottles with cork stoppers. This size.
IKEA sells
This size.
bottles. So IKEA sells
Jars.
jars this size with cork stoppers. That's good to know. If over time the cork will dry out,
I don't know if it's processed or not, but I've seen it.
But, you know, for a while it might work. I don't know if maybe you could buy replacement corks. Here it's not an issue. We break the bottles fast enough that it's not an issue. All right, any other questions on this subject?
You haven't really mentioned like going into pools or bathing in water. How does that
Okay,
affect
yeah, good point.
water on our skin?
Good point. So some of you, I think, may have heard me talk about this at one point, maybe during the orientation. In March, I will have been here for 6 years. Okay, I was a competitive swimmer for many years. Also played water polo. I spent a lot of time in pools. I used to love going into pools. In nearly 6 years, I've been in this pool twice, and it was empty both times. Okay? I don't go in chlorinated water if I can avoid it. Now this is salt water, but understand that when salt breaks down, salt is sodium chloride, it forms chlorine and various byproducts. If there wasn't something like chlorine being formed, you would have a problem with algae. Okay, there'd be things that would grow in the water. So it's the presence of the fact that the salt breaks down and forms some chlorine, that the water is clear and you want to swim in it, right? And it's got much less chlorine than a normal chlorinated pool, much less. And I still don't want to go in it.
It also takes iodine from the body. Chlorinated water.
Chlorinated water takes iodine from the body. Okay, so the salt water should take much less because it's much less chlorine. But I'm not. I don't go in. My choice is to not go in the pool. And there may be exceptions to that, but I've been in hot tubs every once in a while. But I generally prefer to stay out of chlorinated water. You probably already know this. Your shower water here, the water in your bathroom sink, is spring water. Everything here is untreated spring water. No chemicals of any kind. That's what you're bathing in. That's what I prefer to bathe in.
You jump in a hot spring if you're traveling, right?
Yeah, I'll jump in a hot spring. Yeah, but hot springs aren't chlorinated, right? I don't mind the naturally occurring elements in spring. I mean, there are some hot springs that you don't want to go into. You have to know that it's safe because some of them are pretty nasty. So, for those of you, most of you live in Europe, North America, Israel, wherever else. You want to be careful about the water you bathe in. It's been said, I can't verify that this fact is actually true, but it's been said that a 10-minute shower, you're absorbing, in chlorinated water, you're absorbing as much chlorine as if you drank 10 glasses of water. I don't know if that's true or not, but if at home you can buy a filter. Okay, so if your water's chlorinated, as most of your water probably is, are you on your own water system? Well, okay. So, if you've got chlorinated water, you can buy a $50 filter. You unscrew the shower head, you screw this filter on, you screw the shower head onto the bottom of that, and it's going to take out 99% of the chlorine. Okay, much, much better. The water will feel better. It won't affect your skin nearly as much. You're not going to be breathing chlorine gas in. When you can start to smell the chlorine again in the air, you got to change the filter or clean it. Some you change, some you clean. Okay? But that's probably the best cheap investment you can make in your health. 50, 60 bucks, they do a good job. When I still lived in the US, when I still lived in a place where we had chlorinated water, because my last place, I've now been almost 20 years without living on a chlorinated water system. But when I still had chlorinated water, that's what we used. Okay, they work really well. If you're going to take a bath, that's different, right? Because there's a separate faucet where the water comes out much faster. You can buy a flow-through filter. The water falls through to filter out some of the chlorine. They're not as effective, and you're still releasing chlorine gas into the air. So if you want to take a bath in hot water, turn the fan on in the bathroom, have an exhaust fan, turn the fan on, don't be in the room while the bathtub is filling. Wait till you've exhausted the gas from the air, and then it's okay to go in there.
Or if it's in the same area as your shower, like mine is, we just fill our
You can fill it from the shower head, but it takes much longer. Well, the problem is it's cooling down. You can do that, but it's just going to take longer. So if that works for you, that's fine. You'll run it through a shower filter and fill it that way. It just takes longer because you want to be using shower heads that reduce the water flow. So you're getting the water much faster through the tub faucet usually than from a shower head. One point I'll make, sort of related, kind of not related. It's about absorption through the skin of materials. We do absorb some stuff that's on the skin. It depends on what it is. I had a colleague once who suggested that swimming in the ocean was harmful to you because your body is going to absorb salt. Okay? That doesn't happen. That's not what happens. When you go in the ocean, where the concentration of salt is not that different than the concentration of sodium in your body, there's very little that's happening. If you go into the Dead Sea, have you been in the Dead Sea? I'm sure you have. I have too. You go in the Dead Sea, you spend much time in there, you're going to come out quite dehydrated. Okay? Your body's not absorbing salt. That's not what happens. What happens is osmosis. And with osmosis, it's water that's moving. So the water moves towards the greater concentration of solute, in this case salt. Because the water in the Dead Sea is very salty, much more than your body, the water in your body is going to migrate towards the sea. And you're going to lose water. You're going to become dehydrated. Okay? You're not taking salt in, you're losing water. Important distinction. This is one of the reasons why nothing can live in the Dead Sea.
So putting Epsom salts in your bath can be dehydrated.
Putting Epsom salts in your bathtub probably means it's dehydrating you a little bit.
That's exactly why a lot of women use
To become dehydrated? To lose excess water? Yeah, it's not really a very smart way to do it, though. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it's people want to be dehydrated to look a certain way. Some of you may not know this, Craig, I'm sure you do as a coach, but bodybuilders dehydrate themselves before competition. So when you see every single vein sticking out, that's because they're severely dehydrated. This doesn't make any sense. Bodybuilding is harmful on many levels, but this is one of them. They're constantly making themselves severely dehydrated. Don't do that. You shouldn't look that way.
most fitness models and trainers. They smoke, they take Adderall, and that's what my trainers do.
Jen just said that most fitness trainers and models, many of them smoke. They use Adderall. What's Adderall for?
It's for ADD, but people who use it is because it doesn't you don't feel hungry when you go.
Speed.
Amphetamine.
It's an amphetamine. Speed gel. Yeah, that sounds like a bad idea, right? Yeah. Some of you may not have heard this yet. Some of you haven't been here very long. But, there's no substance you should be consuming except food and clean water. I don't use drugs of any kind. I've used 2 ibuprofen in 31 years. That's it. No supplements, no drugs, no herbs, no anything. Okay, you don't need those things. Give your body get your body clean. Consume the things that our bodies were intended to consume. That's all you need to do.
I slept all night on a big white ship. Seagulls were dancing all around. I woke up with a sunrise on the sea. Such a precious gift to me. The salty breeze